Hey everybody, thanks for coming out to the Penn State World Campus Technology Club. Tonight our guest is James Lloyd and he will be talking about building a home hacking lab for testing and fun. Thanks for joining us.
Hello everyone. I guess it's good evening here. I don't know where everybody else is located. It's good evening, good morning or whatever, since it's Penn State World Campus. But tonight I'll be talking to you about building a home hacking lab for testing and fun, version 2.0. I did give the original version of this talk at B-Sites Harrisburg last year, but as any good home lab or project, it continues to build and grow pretty much every day. So kind of updating my talk about what's relevant today and how my home lab looks, figured it kind of fit well together. So my name is Jimmy Lloyd. I'm a principal security analyst and penetration tester for Bank of New York Mellon. I have 3 kids, so life is crazy. But I love cybersecurity. I love DevSecOps and security automation and integrated security into development processes and into all different processes. There is my Twitter handle and my GitHub account. Kind of start off with cybersecurity PSA. I've kind of found in all my about 15 years in cybersecurity that there's kind of 2 variants. A lot of people who feel that they are elite and they're awesome and they don't have anything to learn. And then there's a lot of people on the other side who have imposter syndrome and they don't feel that they're up to the par of other people in the industry. But in actual reality, most people are in the middle there. No matter how many years you've been in the industry, 15, 20, 30 years, I think you always have something to learn. Technology is continuing to change. There's always something new to learn, especially in cybersecurity and cybersecurity space. But no matter how novice you are, say you're just getting into it, you don't know what direction you want to go yet, you still have something to add to the community, to the conversation. A lot of times, every single person comes from a different area and different background, different life. They have a different way of looking at things. So always speak up, give your 2 cents, but then always understand that there's stuff that you need to learn and sit back and then listen as well. When I got started in working in IT, I felt the easiest way to learn something was from a hands-on approach. Get in there, play with something, break it, fix it, and try it again. When I was in college a long time ago, I decided to overclock my college computer, overclock the processor. I learned a hard truth that there is a limit to how high you could go with that overclocking, and I blew out my motherboard and the processor. At that point, I had to buy new parts so I could actually have a computer for school. But it taught me a lot about how to build and repair a computer. So that kind of helped me in general IT, and I feel that helps in cybersecurity as well. Why is building a home lab important? Why is it needed to have? So you're just getting into the industry, you don't know what direction you want to go. You want to go defensive, you want to do security administration, security architecture, you want to do penetration testing, red team work. So you download the software, and then what do? So say you want to do a pen test, get into pen testing. Do you hack your neighbors? Do you hack into your roommate's laptop? Search Trojan for vulnerable systems all around the world. That's not always the best idea. There, in the United States, there are countless cybersecurity laws. I know there's worldwide cybersecurity related laws, but these are just some of the ones in the United States. And obviously you don't want to go to jail if you're just getting started and you don't, you want to learn, but you shouldn't go to jail just to learn. So again, in the United States, cybercrime is described as the unauthorized access of the computer system or unauthorized access to a computer service. This is kind of just a quick breakdown of penalties and damages that go along with cybercrime in the United States. So it kind of brings us to ethical hacking. Ethical hacking on the other side is the authorized testing and verification of security vulnerabilities on a system. So what we're then going to perform is ethical hacking on a home lab. Why is a home hacking lab fun? It's literally a virtual playground. It's a hands-on approach to learning. You can get your hands into it, build up the system, and then if you want to get into penetration testing, you can learn how to bypass the security mechanisms and hack into the machine. If that's the way you want to go, from my experience, hacking is a lot of fun. The first time you ever get a shell on a system or get root, you kind of get some adrenaline and some endorphins running through that. But then if you want to go on the defensive side, it allows you to learn and build out security tools, intrusion detection systems from network level to the host level, antivirus technologies, all those different things you can test with your home lab as well. Some additional benefits of a home lab, you can mimic a real world environment. Say you're getting into freelance security testing, and you're hired by a company to test their network. Obviously, you don't want to run live fire penetration testing tools and exploit tools on their system. So you could mimic that environment in your own lab, and then test things out to see what would work, what doesn't, and then kind of go from there. Sorry, I'm trying to look over at the chat as well. So if I'm missing anything, if there are any questions pop up in the chat, let me know and I'll kind of look down real quick. Sorry, I looked over at my other screen for that. So kind of there's three, in my mind, there's three breakdowns: CTF, CyberRange, and then the home lab. CTF is more of a tailored, directed system. For example, Hack the Box. I don't know how many people are familiar with Hack the Box, but it's a specific system with specific vulnerabilities, and you get the user level and you get root level. That's more of a CTF, and that's also the way a CTF is run in my experience at B-Sides events and security conferences against specific targets, specific vulnerabilities that are built into a system so you can kind of progress. Then kind of you jump to the other side. A CyberRange is a full-featured environment, from Active Directory domain controllers, workstations, servers levels. You could build that in a quote-unquote CyberRange. In my opinion, a home lab is CyberRange Lite. You have that ability to set up vulnerable systems for CTF Lite, but then you also have the ability to build out full operating systems, vulnerable operating systems that you can then test different tool sets and scenarios. Kind of going back to Hack the Box, actually been playing around with the VIP license of Hack the Box. It gives you access to a lot of the retired machines, and because it gives you access to a lot of retired machines, one issue I ran into at Hack the Box with the free version is Friday, Saturday night, Sunday during the day, there's a ton of people in, and if somebody gets root on the system, they can change the configuration, and then you have to reset the system. So resetting the system is good, but then it takes it offline, so it's pretty much being reset every 5 minutes. So, but Ray also informed me earlier that Penn State does have a university license. She did put something in there about the in the chat room, kind of reiterate what you said in there, hit her up for access to that. Attack Defense is another online option, again, very tailored to specific vulnerabilities, specific tactics. Kind of as you can see in the screenshot below, web app CVEs. So, you go in and you learn how to to get into a system on a specific CVE. So now you decide, okay, I want to do this. I want to build my home hacking lab. So in my opinion, the first step is plan where you want to go. Do you want to learn web application pen testing? Do you want to do Windows security architecture? Do you want to do set up some kind of in-home SIM to be a SOC analyst? Different plan which direction you want to go, and then document and design out that plan. I'm a huge person of writing things down. I use Moleskine. Looking around my office here, I got a bunch of Moleskine notebooks, and I use OneNote with an Apple Pencil on my iPad. Really big on writing out and documenting that. I think it's very important to, kind of visualize before you build out your network. And then you want to segment out your network. You don't want to have your vulnerable systems riding on the same quote unquote production network you have at home. Obviously, hopefully you have a basic firewall blocking it, but again, you want to create that demarcation. Install and purchase any tools you need, software, hardware, and then do a lot of research. There's a ton of information on the internet. As I say, ton, just be aware there is sometimes too much information. This is a great website for building a home hacking lab and kind of test systems. Put down the URL there to make sure, like I said, I highly recommend this. But just looking at this page, it can be very overwhelming from one Google search information. So different options for building your home lab. You have bare metal / physical, cloud, and virtualization. Cloud versus physical. Obviously, a lot of people know what cloud is. Don't want to really go into cloud computing, but your major players: AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud Services. I also kind of consider VPS services like DigitalOcean cloud-based, even though it's more of an operating system running out on the internet. I still consider it quote unquote cloud. And then obviously your physical is in your home, bare metal machine. Pros and cons of cloud services for running a home lab: speed, agility, and cost are your pros. Cons are cost, networking, and traffic flow. I have cost as both a pro and a con, because as you can see, this screenshot's a little dated. It's not exactly up to date, but say you want to run a T2 large for an hour, it's 12 cents. So you spin this up, test some injects or an exploit that you're working on 2019 server, spin it down within an hour. Your AWS bill is going to be 12 cents. It's also a con, because what happens if you accidentally leave that up for 3 months? You're going to get a much bigger AWS bill because of that. Also, traffic flow and networking are cons, because the way networking is handled inside the cloud services would be a little different than if you was running on your own land. Say you load up Wireshark to capture packets and analyze the packets. When it crosses that line into, say, AWS, you're not going to get the same level of detail that you would get if it was all on the same LAN segment in your home. Kind of a quick cloud demo. I apologize if a lot of people aren't familiar with Amazon Web Services. I'm just kind of high level here. Usually when you log in, this is your dashboard. EC2 is Elastic Cloud Computing. That's where the images are stored. They're usually stored as an AMI, Amazon Machine Image. And because it's Amazon, they allow a search function, the AWS Marketplace, and you search for Windows Server, and then there you are presented with the different options for Windows Server, for the AMI. Click on the one you want. Within 5 minutes, you'll be up and running. You just set up your access and your networking, and away you go. So then, there's physical and cloud. Next step is virtualization. It kind of breaks up virtualization into 2 levels: full operating system virtualization, and then containers. So for full operating system virtualization, I can't even talk this evening. couple software options, VM Workstation Fusion and VMware Player, all by VMware. VM Workstation and VMware Player are PC only. Fusion is the Mac OS version. Oracle VirtualBox, multi-platform and free. I use Parallels. It runs Mac OS only. There are some negatives to Parallels that I'm running into lately. I'll discuss those here in a little bit. And then ES6i, if you have a full hypervisor running on the system, no operating system, you just load the VMs right over top of the hypervisor. So pros and cons of full operating system VMs. Highly configurable, expandable. You have the full operating system at your fingertips. You have the ability, you are able to limit availability with setting up NAT only, system level only, or networking, or bridged, so it has a IP address outside of your system. And then snapshotting is basic backup restore ability. Some cons are that it's very resource intensive. Again, you're running a full operating system. And because of that, sometimes it takes a little longer to set up and configure. So attack platforms and targets in virtualization. Again, this is kind of a subset of virtualization. Here are many different attack platforms. I am a Kali fan. I do see its issues. So I'm actually in the process of testing out Parrot and Slingshot, which is SANS Linux distro that they're pushing for a lot of their trading classes. I do have that. I'm not sure if I like it. It's an older version of the Linux kernel, and it doesn't have a lot of cool backgrounds like Kali and Parrot have. But if it is functional, then I'll go look at using it. And then also you can use your native OS, Mac OS or Windows, or a custom Ubuntu or custom Linux build. Obviously, Ubuntu and Debian, you just change the app sources file, and then you can download using apps any Kali or any attack tools that you may need on that. I am a big fan of, I'm a huge Apple fanboy, so I like to use my native Mac OS as a attack platform. Again, it has its limitations, but that's kind of my preferred attack platform. Windows 10, since they introduced WSL, I feel it's kind of taken a huge jump into becoming a full attack platform itself. With the WSL, you're able to load Linux kernels on Windows 10 and have on my, which is kind of, I want to use the term meta, but the way I have my Windows 10 VM on my Mac is I have Kali WSL running on my Windows 10 VM running on my Mac, so it's kind of multiple levels down. But I really kind of am liking the ability of what you can do with Windows 10 WSL. So then we go from our attack platform to your vulnerable targets. Obviously, full operating system and then containers. Metasploitable is a full vulnerable operating system developed by Offensive Security. Offensive Security is also who releases Kali Linux. Obviously, they created Metasploitable so you can help test a lot of the tools that are built into Kali. Then, what is Docker? I was going to change the slide to what is containers, but the way I don't want to say I see Docker and containers as one and the same. Docker is a tool for managing and using containers. But the way I kind of look at containers is Kubernetes. Yeah, well, I'm not an enterprise, so I've never actually gotten into Kubernetes. But that's why I kind of use Docker, and I understand that Docker Desktop is kind of going by the wayside. It's a shame because I really like it. But I kind of look at Docker and containers as virtualized applications and frameworks, not full operating system, but just an application or a LAMP stack. You can say you get a full Docker LAMP stack. Container LAMP stack. So pros and cons of containers. Somebody's already done the work for you using GitHub or Docker Hub. It's very easy to go out and pull down and use somebody else's work that they put out there. It's very easy to deploy and update, and you have the ability, again, to limit the availability. From my experience, a lot of containers are host only by default. You can change the connection strings or the configuration to be accessible outside the host, but normally they're pretty limited. Some cons: Docker images are not easily configurable after the fact. The way, again, I look at it is you could rewrite your own Linux kernel, but have fun with that. I am not that daring to do that. So if I could, I'm sure I could break apart somebody's Docker container, change it up and rewrap it up if I had the time and the patience to do so. But then also stability, because somebody else has created the Docker image, the Docker container, and then you gotta make sure that you trust the source that you get it. The internet and GitHub are full of good code snippets, but not always trustworthy. I guess I could throw in, gosh, what's the code website when you need to search for a code problem? Somebody's gonna throw it up there in the chat. I'm gonna kick myself for forgetting the website. But anyway, not SourceForge. I'll have to look it up. But anyway, I'll look it up here in a little bit. So anyway, some important Docker commands if you're using the Docker CLI: run, start, stop. Obviously, it makes sense. Docker images and PS images shows you all the Docker images that you have. Docker PS shows all the running Docker containers. So I started out as a Windows guy. Okay, thank you for answering that question. So I started out as a Windows admin, and I hated Linux. I hated command line. Now it's funny because I'm the opposite way. But when I started getting into Docker, I found Kitematic. Kitematic is a GUI for Docker. It allows you to search, deploy, and configure a Docker image. I've found that as it is an overlay to Docker desktop, it does have its limitations and its problems. So that's kind of where I got more into just using the Docker CLI to access Docker desktop. So now we go into OWASP. OWASP is an international consortium that is set up to help the web security, help developers increase security in web applications. They develop the OWASP Top 10. Every 3 years, they release a new version. I think I heard that they're on point for Q4 of 2020 to have an updated copy. But to be honest, the 2017 version was supposed to come out in 2016, so it was pushed about almost a year and a half. So we'll see if it'll be, next time, I'm talking about OWASP Top 10, it might be A1 2021. We'll see about that. So OWASP also has local chapter groups. I'm actually one of the co-leaders of the Harrisburg chapter. There's our group. We've just started last year. We've discussed web application security. In our as we're a new chapter group, we've only had 2 meetings, and then those 2 meetings just broke down the OWASP Top 10, pretty been standard. And then our last meetup that we had a couple of weeks ago, a former coworker of mine, and actually Pete, who used to work or who now works for SAMS, gave a preview of his cloud security webcast. So what OWASP also does to help educate the developers and security professionals on the OWASP Top 10, they've developed a bunch of vulnerable applications. Juice is very popular, written on Node.js. WebGoat. WebGoat's been around for a really long time. The original version was a LAMP stack with Linux and Apache. And then they also have a .NET version. And then they have Hackademic, which is, again, is built for universities. I did play around with it. The build out is pretty involved. But yeah, if you're looking for a challenge, setting it up for a university would be interesting to see in action. So again, you mentioned OWASP GShop is the most popular vulnerable website or vulnerable framework that they have. It is set up to be single user, but it's very easy to wrap it in CTFD or the web service, I think it's called Heroku. It's easy to set up a CTF environment for that. Again, GShop is written in Node.js, Express, and Angular. So my current Docker setup is Dan Vulnerable Web App, OWASP GShop, WebGoes.net, Tiredful API, which is a obviously vulnerable API web service application. In my experience in my work, a lot of applications are moving to web services and API access, so I figured that would be a good one to add to the arsenal. Waco Pick2 is one I came across last year, and the color looked interesting. And I've actually just been getting more into cloud penetration testing and came across Cloud Goat, which downloads the Docker image, and then you can link it to your AWS account, AWS keys, and set up vulnerable S3 buckets and the vulnerable IAM policies. So it's still just in the infancy of testing it out, but I thought it looked pretty interesting. So I'm going to try and stop sharing my screen here. Stop sharing this. Let's see if we can share this. Okay. Let me know if everybody can see this.
Yep, we can see it.
Okay. Thank you. So my current setup is I mentioned I have the Docker images. So what we're going to do, and because I am actually I'll kind of go around. So there's my Docker stuff. Here's my local VMs running parallel. Obviously I have Parrot loaded up, and then Kali. Again, I mentioned I'm kind of a big Kali person. I love the fact that they changed Kali away from super user, but the first thing I always do when I log into terminal is sudo su. But don't really look at that. So then I also have my ESXi server, and running on ESXi is I have a Debian system, 2019 server, 16 server, 2012 R2. Security Onion, and Ubuntu 2004. My plan for these Windows servers was to set up an Active Directory environment and actually migrate it up the chain. Kind of started out as the main GC being 2012, migrating to 2016, and migrating up to 2019, and kind of wanted to see where the Active Directory configuration, how it changed as you kind of moved up the releases. Security Onion is a security monitoring IDS, network level IDS. Kind of got some ideas about seeing what's flowing around my network. So again, it's kind of a defensive tool I wanted to load up there. And also, I forgot to mention this before, but the Windows servers, these are all 120-day trials. Microsoft has a great website for downloading trials of all their software. So you don't need to have a budget of $30,000 to install these in your home system. So kind of I'll give a quick demo of GShop. So because I don't have everything memorized. So that's when Docker command is run up startup GShop. And it's running on port 3000. So we go over here to port 3000. So here is GShop. Again, it's a modern e-commerce site about obviously a GShop. Kind of just show you real quick one of the flags that's in GShop. Here. Actually, hold on a second. It's to copy link location. My mouse is not wanting to work out today, so and then you see, hey, there's an FTP site. You can also find this if you're on Dirtbus or whatever. So you go there, and then you find an acquisitions form, and you open that up, and it says, hey, you solved a challenge. You caught a flag. So that's just kind of a little bit about GShop, and there's probably, I don't know the total number of flags in GShop, but they have a lot, and they're different levels. There's at least 5 or 6 levels of vulnerabilities built into GShop. Again, a great tool for kind of learning web app vulnerabilities. This is just kind of a quick demo of my network. And let me see if I can do this now. If I can go back to, there we go. Can you guys see my presentation?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. All right, so why this setup works for me. I can test from my host. Like I said earlier, I'm a huge, Apple fanboy and Mac. I love doing stuff in Mac Terminal. I use Homebrew as my package manager on Mac to install a lot of tools. And I've kind of been migrating away from using that, kind of getting more into using Windows 10 straight. I think we're going to start using Windows 10 for work. I actually have a Mac for work, but we're supposed to get new Windows 10 machines, pretty beefy machines. So I'm going to start using the WSL for actual pen testing for work. Again, I kind of said earlier that I like to have full operating system VMs because I like to use Kali. So I'm testing out Parrot and Slingshot. Parrot I like. The only thing, again, it's going to kind of sound kind of stupid, but aesthetically the terminal looks a little different in Parrot, and it's taking a little while for me to get used to. But I think if it works out better, I might move to that. And then using a combination of Docker images, Docker containers, remote and local VMs allows for a lot of diversity. I can run an Active Directory environment, or with GShop a vulnerable Node.js application. What does not work for me is actually recently, they say use Parallel. I used to love it, and I still think it's a great tool for VMs. However, I ran into a latest, I guess in Debian 9, might be wrong on the version, but they changed the Linux kernel in the latest version of Kali and actually Parrot OS as well. And Parallel's tools will not load with that Linux kernel issue. I can load part of the tools, I can get copy paste, but I cannot resize the window. If I would try and resize my Parallels window for Kali right now, the entire VM would lock up, and the only way to get out is to shut it down. So it's very annoying when you'd like to just expand the window, you can't. And then some other issues I've kind of run into: resources, time, and patience. If I had thousands and millions of dollars to build this out, I'd build it exactly the way I wanted. And if I had all the time in the world, I'd be having hosting full CTFs in my basement in my CyberRange. Earlier I mentioned I have 3 kids and a wife, so finding time for that is sometimes far between. Past generations of my setup, when I started getting into security testing, I just wanted a system to test an exploit I was actually working on for when I worked at DISA. So my first thing I wanted to try and just see how that ran on Windows 7. That's what the main operating system was at the time. And then I kind of expanded beyond that. I don't know how many people are familiar with DISA Stigs, but DISA Stigs allow you to lock down security-wise a Windows image server or workstation. Just the building configuration tools, it's all built there just to lock down an image. So like the DISA Stig would not allow a person or a service to write to the user share. So when I was working on an exploit for DISA, I had to figure out a better place to drop those files that they would still run and load, and then be able to be accessed by memory. CIS templates are just another great resource for locking down workstations and servers. I've actually kind of compared this stage to CIS benchmarks. I actually like CIS benchmarks a little bit better. CIS is kind of a commercial company, not really commercial, but they're not a government entity like DIFA is, so they're a little nicer. And then any operating system I can get my hands free on. That's where I came across the Windows evaluation portal to download, the server copies. Some future ideas I have for my my home lab. Obviously, crossed off ES6i server because I already have that. I do want to build earlier I said CyberRange Lite. I do want to build that in my home and have an Active Directory architecture built in, full LDAP, and be able to push out GPOs from the Active Directory to workstation, and then be able to figure out how to bypass those because of pen testing. So some other future ideas. Want to build some custom vulnerable applications with Apache or Nginx, automate deployment of the VMs, Puppet, Ansible, any kind of automation tool like that. And then I want to get more into bypassing WAF technologies. A lot of WAFs are really good at blocking, but a lot of them are very static. So it's very easy to bypass a lot of them. So kind of what got me into doing more expansive, expanding my home lab was some real world testing scenarios. This is one that I ran into. I started working at a previous employer, an automated vulnerability scanner. And I wanted this to be able to be part of the CI/CD pipeline. Developers would push code to pre-production, and it would run out there for a day. QA would test it, and then a couple of days later, it'd be pushed to production. But I wanted security testing to be part of QA testing. So I built this applications Python script essentially called Cyan. We also had a little PowerShell and Bash in it originally, but it uses dynamic vulnerability scanners and then aggregates results, and then would create JIRA tickets for the developers so they could fix any security holes prior to the code going to production. And I needed a vulnerable web app to test against, could test against the application that I was, building this for. There's plenty of security issues there, but it's not always good to test your security software even on a pre-production system. I mean, at least I was going for pre-prod rather than production, but still I didn't want to potentially break something when I was writing code, and I'm not a prolific Python coder. I'm a little bit better now, but especially at the time. Real dev testing prod. I always laugh. There's a clip of, God, my brain is really not working tonight, of a Fox News broadcaster, and he's yelling, "We'll do it live. We'll do it live." So every time somebody says, screw it, we're testing in production, that's the clip that runs in my head. Anyway, that's where I came across vulnerable Docker images again to test those dynamic scanners against vulnerable web apps, where I knew exactly what kind of findings I was going to get from the scanners. I've actually recently started changing up the code of Cyan from just basic Python script to Django API-driven architecture. I'm not a marketing major, so I just changed the name to Cyan Web. If it uses curl commands or a browser get command. Yes, thank you, Bill O'Reilly. That's exactly who it was. Thank you so much. So so that's kind of my personal development is in the Cyan project. Also, kind of real-world test scenarios for having a home lab, exploit development, bug hunting, and training. Obviously, training goes self-explanatory. Exploit development, again, I kind of talked about a little bit about when I was at DISA, testing some injects for an exercise. Obviously, again, testing in production on your system, especially when you work for the government, is not always ideal. So having a lab environment, a home lab environment to test how that exploit will run and what security mechanisms I could bypass, it was great to have that kind of lab environment. Kind of going on that line, the reason I was building some injects is I was involved in your Cyber Command CyberFlag and the Department of Defense CyberRange environment. CyberFlag was an annual exercise out in Nellis Air Force Base, brought in defenders, pen testers, red teamers, and Whitetail, who's organized the entire event, made sure the education pieces were met for the actual exercise. The CyberRange that is down in Quantico, Virginia, DoD CyberRange, was just so impressive to me. Again, kind of in my experience with work, kind of getting to be part of different training events, being part of the exercise and getting to go down to Quantico to see the CyberRange, it kind of gave me that fire to build more in my home lab. The CyberRange is very impressive. Again, a full VM environment to take in, was able to take in the defender's tools, whatever they brought down there, install them, and then we were able to pre-load a lot of the red team injects so they could meet the training objectives going forward. Things I learned, again, I said I took a lot away from the CyberFlag and the CyberRange. The one thing I will say is not on here, but when I was out in Las Vegas in Nellis Air Force Base for CyberFlag, we were there for 2.5 weeks. I don't know how many people have been to Vegas, but 2.5 weeks is way too long to be in Las Vegas. I learned to hate it. I don't think I ever want to go back. I've never been to DEF CON and I want to go, but I don't want to go back to Vegas. Like if they could move DEF CON outside of Vegas, I would love to go. Anyway, having a complete and flexible testing environment is definitely imperative for for any kind of training, especially in cybersecurity. Planning is key, and then you can create a small scale CyberRange in your home for very cheap and/or free. Ray, you love Vegas? I liked Vegas the first time I went. I was out there for 2 nights. That's my opinion is 2 to 3 nights is the perfect amount of time to be in Vegas. Any longer, it just peels your skin off.
You're not doing enough.
Well, leaving the hotel at 4:30 in the morning and getting back to the hotel at 7 o'clock, yeah, it was not really a fun trip. But I did learn a lot in the actual CyberFlag exercise. So some final comments. You will break almost everything as you build out your environment, as you test. That's okay. That's why it is your home lab. GPOs, I haven't messed with them, Windows GPOs recently, but I knew back in the day, if you locked down something too restrictive, there was no way to get your Windows system back. So it's a great way to kind of test out what things can be reversed and what things cannot. Again, my opinion, it's a much better way to learn a technique, a tool, a new piece of software than just reading a book about it. I'm a big hands-on person. Start small, build up. The first program everybody writes is, sorry, I'm reading the chat again, locking down GPS break the user's will. You're right, it does do that. But if it's your own system, you're breaking your own will as well. But so, if any person starts in coding and development, your first program is a print of hello world, writing 1,000-line Python code, Ruby code, Java, whatever on your first time doing that, learning that coding language. So start small, then build up. And again, segment your work. So in summary, I guess these 2 slides are kind of the same, but a little different. Building a home lab is important for growing and learning. It's better than going to jail. You don't need a lot of money. I mentioned a bunch of free solutions there. Linux distributions are free. Oracle VirtualBox is free. So you don't need a lot of money. You don't even need any money to get started. Build upon your setup, document. again, always give back to the community. You know, kind of been working in this industry in IT for 18, 19 years, and cybersecurity for 15. I think it's definitely important to always give back, always talk to people. You know, you can learn something from them and they can learn something from you. So I think it's very important. And most importantly, have fun. I'm a big proponent of just enjoying yourself and having fun. And, I have three kids, and I was in my home with all three kids for 3 months at the start of this COVID outbreak. I learned to laugh, or I would go insane. Again, you know, my brain is not working right now, but Jimmy Buffett has a great line: "If we didn't laugh, we'd all go insane." So I definitely am a big proponent of that line. So here's some references. The top one is the evaluation site for downloading the Windows Server evaluation copy. Metasploit Unleashed is a great breakout if you don't know a whole lot about Metasploit. And then Guide to Docker Commands is kind of used for the Docker command list. So something I did not get to do really at the B-Sides talk, but I am kind of excited about doing now, kind of open up to any questions or comments, or if anybody has any.
Just a quick comment. DEF CON's 100% virtual and free this year.
Yeah, I saw that, but I'm waiting until the sign up. I'm waiting to see how they're going to actually run that. I've kind of heard mixed things on virtual cons that have been running over the last couple months. I haven't experienced one, but I will actually admit this, but I bought a DEF CON is canceled shirt because I thought they were cool. I feel like such a poser wearing that shirt around, being that I've never been to DEF CON. But I thought that the DEF CON canceled t-shirt was pretty cool.
I will say I just did the Layer 8 convention, and that was all virtual, and that one was run very well. So don't be completely scared off.
Actually, I was going to say I listened to Security Weekly, and they're really big on Layer 8, and they had nothing but good things to say about Layer 8, so I can definitely see how that was run pretty well.
There are a few questions in chat. I don't know if you want to read them or you want me to.
I can take a look. I was just scrolling up. Raspberry Pis are affordable and attractive people start home lab. So I have 2 Raspberry Pis running in my home lab. I have a Pi W that I built as a hardware inject, where I can pretty much take it, drop it in a network, and it SSHs to my AWS instance, my AWS Lightsail instance. Kind of figured a little fun project for that. And then my Raspberry Pi 3 is actually running Homebridge, which I don't know if anybody's familiar with Homebridge, but it links home automation products that are not home kit accessible to HomeKit, so I can control with Siri. So those are my 2 Raspberry Pi projects I have in my house. I also do have, it's not really running on Raspberry Pi, it's running on a VM, as you kind of saw in my ES65 server, but Pi-hole, I love Pi-hole. I think it is a great DNS blogger. The only issue I've run into is my wife does not like it because it blocks a lot of advertising and tracking sites that are built into a lot of emails. Most Bed Bath & Beyond emails that I get now there's no images because they all have tracking cookies on them. Kind of a little piece of information about me as well about the Raspberry Pi. Where I was excited about that. My former employer was a digital marketing company where their job was to inject a pixel into certain websites so they could track you. So once I left that organization, I was big on not being tracked when I go to certain sites. Would it be worth setting up a public honeypot like SANS shield in your lab to attack it? That is a great idea. I've actually thought about kind of going into a honeypot, into an idea of setting up a honeypot. I haven't gone down that route. To be honest, something that I kind of get stuck in is there's so many different areas that are so many different projects I want to do. I mentioned earlier about CloudGoat. I really want to get more into cloud pen testing. So if you kind of go down that route, then, you know, not saying I can't go back to honeypots, but I kind of want to focus on one at a time. But I do love the idea of setting up a honeypot and kind of seeing, you know, I actually want to put a honeypot out on the internet, on, you know, on the outside of my public IP, and just kind of see what happens, see what kind of hits it. I don't know how many people have actually run a showdown search on their local IP to see what comes up. I think that's pretty interesting. So to kind of see a public honeypot would be really, really interesting. The person who said I should set up a pie hole, I have some great websites I use for doing it, and I can export my block list. I think I'm blocking like 5.2 billion sites because of all the blacklist pages I have. That's a little excessive, and I had to whitelist a lot of stuff to make things successful. CBS All Access, the streaming service, requires certain sites to be whitelisted or the service will not work. I have the $6 a month version, and that still runs ads. And if you don't allow the ads to run, the service will not work. So again, it's kind of a learning curve with Pi-hole, but I like it a lot. I have never run or even heard of Proxmox, to be honest with you. That's something would be interesting to look into. Actually write that down to look into. Kind of a side note, I was kind of looking around to grab one of my mini moleskins, but I'm not affiliated with the guy who wrote this book at all. But so back a couple years ago, I got RTFM, the Red Team Field Manual. For a couple of reasons, I thought it was a great tool, great resource. And also, I worked with Ben Clark when I worked for DISA, actually at the CyberFlag event. But RTFM had its limitations. I don't know how many people are familiar with this book. It is the operator handbook by NetMux. It is amazing. I mean, you can see how thick it is, and it has everything. I think this is a great resource. I think it's like 15 bucks. So I think that, you know, if you're interested in kind of, you know, having commands and not having to do Google searches, this is a great resource to have. So read over here to policy. I can, let's see if I can do this real quick. New share. I'm going to switch over to Firefox. And so here's my Pi-hole setup. Can everybody see it? So 2.2 million sites are blocked in my Pi-hole setup. So this is how I have it set up. So I don't know what you really want, what specific questions about Pi-hole you have, but here's how the DNS forwarding set up. And then I actually have my local DHCP pointing everybody to this, and also 1.1.1.1. So to use for routing segmentation. I am not a pfSense type of guy. That's an area, again, I'm kind of less to get into. I think it'd be really cool to get into the capabilities of the firewalling there. But I have a Ubiquiti Unify set up in my home. I've been working from home for 6.5 years. So a couple years ago, I decided to kind of build out a quasi professional level system. I have a AP or 2 APs, the switch, and then the security gateway. So that's kind of doing my own firewalling there. So I love Unify. I know some people who don't like it, don't like the USG, the limitations of the USG, but I think I have the USG. I think the USG gives me that level up that I didn't have for my Verizon router. But again, kind of haven't really gotten into a lot of advanced firewalling, and thought about getting setting up the security onion to kind of seeing what kind of IDS stuff, what security levels and layers I can build in there. Yeah, I actually have Verizon Fios, so setting up the USG inline and just having the firewall or the Fios router hanging off for Mako was an interesting setup. I think I was going to blog about that, but I don't think I did. I'll have to write that up. I follow Troy Hunt on Twitter, and he's a huge proponent of Ubiquiti equipment, and that's kind of where I got into that area. But Cloud Key, I thought about getting a Cloud Key. I didn't set it up. I actually have the cloud software just running on one of my Windows systems. Again, I think having an individual Cloud Key is cool, but I couldn't justify the price at this point. So, any other questions about home lab, home networking, anything like that? Oh, by the way, a friend of mine runs the Cloud Key software as a Docker image on his QNAP machine. So they do have Docker images. It doesn't update every time the cloud software gets updated, but I thought that was pretty interesting that they have a Docker image for it as well. And you're welcome. Awesome. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for having me.
Cool. So I guess that's all the questions. So I want to thank you for coming. Home labs are a question that I think a lot of people in security and risk analysis and the related degrees have all the time. So hopefully this presentation is very helpful to everybody.
Well, again, thank you so much for allowing me to come talk to you guys, and I appreciate the time and appreciate the talk. I love talking shop. My twins are 2 years old, so they're just starting to talk, but they don't really like to talk about network configurations and Pi-hole blocking and all that.
Not yet.
No. They do play on iPads already, but
Oh yeah, mine do too. And we will make this presentation available. I'll post it on the website or something, and everybody can have access.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for coming out. Have a good night.
Thank you so much.